Hi, and welcome back to the FreeFormKnits YouTube channel. I'm Haxann Evers, a knit and crocheter, which is freeform ways of crafting led to the world of design. All the places you can find me listed right down below this video. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for stopping by and crafting with me today. If you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any future videos. And if you're returning here, thank you so much for coming back. In this video, I want to talk to you about one of my latest finished objects, which is a corner-to-corner scrappy blanket. My first corner-to-corner scrappy blanket ever, and I'm in love with it, and I wanted to make this video to talk about it, to share with you some tips and tricks I came up with to help me make this, because for a long time I did not want to make a scrappy blanket because it just so many different things, and I'm going to talk to you all about them. So that's one reason I want to make this video, and another reason is I don't want to forget what I did with this blanket, which is more than likely. So if you have a whip you're working on, sit down, let's talk about scrappy blankets. So if you followed me for a while, then you've probably seen my podcast episode talking about this blanket, and I'm going to show you it right now. Here it is in all its glory. It is huge. I'll be sure to insert some pictures. So how I even started this blanket, what inspired me to make it, was my sister came up to me with this huge basket. It's got other stuff in it now, but at the time it was filled with all her scraps. It was just filled. And she said, I'm done with this yarn, take this basket. And so I did, and thought it was the perfect excuse to finally conquer making scrappy blankets. I see all over with different podcasters and on Instagram other people working on their scrappy blankets, and it's so inspiring, but it's also, it felt overwhelming. I'm not a monogamous crafter. Like, I have multiple projects going at the same time, but there's usually only one of each project. Like, I'll have one sweater, I'll have one hat, one shawl, all that stuff. So the idea of a blanket that is meant to be worked over a period of time was just really overwhelming to me. And another thing is, if you can kind of see from this blanket, when I started this blanket, I laid out the colors, intending to go from lightest to darkest for the blues, and then into the reds, and then into the purples. If you can see, I'm clearly not very good at the color wheel. Clearly some lighter colors could have gone first. So that was another thing holding me up. I just felt I wasn't good at color. But it turns out, if you're not good at color, literally no one cares. No one's gonna say you can't put that color there. So just all these little things that I built up in my head that I decided, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make a scrappy blanket. So part of this blanket was inspired. I watch Amy Kate of the Graceful Tankle. She, during Advent, she got an Advent calendar, and for her Advent, she made a corner-to-corner blanket. And she did one color per day, and then she put in between a stripe of gray. And at the end of it, she got a really good sized blanket, which I was surprised about. And it just looked really good. Like, it just looked cohesive with that stripe of gray. And so that's what with that and the yarn, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make this blanket. So first I had to learn how to do the corner-to-corner method. And I'll actually link the tutorial I followed on YouTube. It was a really good tutorial. It was a short tutorial, kept my attention span. And it's super easy, so don't worry about that. I kind of felt like it would be hard, but it's not hard at all. It's super easy technique. Literally chains and double crochets, you're fine. So how I ended up with this blanket, how I ended up laying out the colors. So first I went through my sister's scraps, and I picked all the colors that were similar in their weight. So that's not really, I feel like that's not necessary, to be honest. Like, you could make a blanket with different varying weights of yarn, and actually in this there are some yarns that are a little bit thinner than others. This is mostly worsted weight, but I did have some, like this yarn is technically a DK, but I used it anyway, and it's totally fine. So I laid everything out, and I laid it out in the order I wanted it to be, or I thought I wanted it to be. Because another thing with this blanket that I did is I followed Amy Kate's, like she said, when she couldn't complete a stripe, that was it. She cut the yarn. Even though she could go like half a stripe, she just cut the yarn and went to the gray stripe, and that kept it looking very cohesive. And that's what I did which proved out to be a little bit hard because some of those yarns, especially when you get to the wider portions of the blanket, they don't go very far, and then you like short a color. But it's okay. And I even at some points, you can see for this stripe, I ended up recycling a color. Like I started with this purple, but then I had to finish with this color, and it's okay. It's okay. So that was something I did. And I think the biggest thing that I would say, the biggest thing about a scrappy blanket, especially if you plan the colors like this, is how do I take that yarn around with me? Because I think we all have project bag laying around, and we all, you know, work on our projects at different places in the house or out and about, you know. How do I transport this? How do I keep it all organized? And what I did is, so this basket is actually all set up for a new project I'm working on. I'm gonna be starting soon, but I had my blanket in here. So I have this big basket and I have this smaller basket. And what I did is I took all those little bits of yarn, these little balls for the blanket, and I would put them in this basket. And I actually had note cards, and I don't have any here now. Oh yes, I do. I took note cards and I put on the note cards numbers 1 through 12 because I picked 24 yarns, 12 stripes for the first half, 12 for the second half, 1 through 12, and I laid them in this basket. So I would put one yarn, one note card with that number, and I'd put another yarn, and another note card with that number, and then so I would do that for this whole basket, fill it for the first half of the blanket, and then I would empty it and put the second half when I came to it. And I put the blanket in this half, so even as big as the blanket got, it still fit in this bucket. And that helped me immensely because I was actually working on it, because it was contained and I had everything I needed in this spot, and it was amazing, especially since I had a big skein of gray. I actually had scraps of gray, but if I did have a big skein of the gray I used in between, it fit also in this side with the blanket, since I was using that color mostly for the stripes in between. And so that is what I did to take my project along with me. And that helped me immensely because my project, I could easily, it was just a basket, it was like a big project bag, so I could take it around in different spots of the house when I wanted to work on it, you know. It was just, and I had everything I needed. I didn't have to, oh, I need my next color, I gotta run up to my craft room and get it. It was so easy because I'd done the planning. I could just work on it, and it got done so fast. Like a scrappy blanket, you're supposed to, like, you know, it doesn't have to get done right away, but this project did get done relatively quickly because I was obsessed with it. And like I said, the color placement is not perfect. If I did it again, I would probably change some things, but I love it. It looks so good. And it is such a good size for only using 24 of these colors and then the gray in between. I haven't measured it, but it's like a crib size blanket, I would say, a perfect size baby blanket. It's amazing and I love it. The other thing that held me up from making a scrappy blanket, especially one that looks as cohesive as this one, like this one looks, you know, I wasn't crocheting over ends or anything, so I don't really know if I could with the corner to corner construction. I don't know, I haven't experimented with it enough. Like I feel like it would, the ends would show pretty a lot if I were to do that. But I wasn't like knotting colors together because I wanted it to look this very cohesiveness. You know, so I had a lot of ends, and that helped me up for making a scrappy blanket for so long. 2 ends for each of these colors, that's 48 ends alone, and then cutting and starting the gray each time. A lot of ends. We're closing in over 100 ends here. So as you can see, I do have a border here. I figured for my border, starting this project, that I would just do a single crochet border around, crochet over the ends, call it a day. But when I talked about this project on my podcast, a viewer actually mentioned doing a enclosed border. And I had actually just seen, like somewhere on Instagram, an enclosed border. And I remember when I saw it, I thought, well, that looks really clever, but you know, that'll be too thick. And then when this viewer mentioned it, I kind of thought that again, but then I realized, you know, maybe it won't be. Actually, the idea just kind of grew on me, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do an enclosed border. And as you can see, I did, and it looks amazing. Okay, it looks amazing. Cannot stress this enough. It's amazing. So how you do an enclosed border, you have to slip stitch all the way around the blanket one time, and then slip stitch on the back of those slip stitches another time, and then you have to make 2 sides from those slip stitches. You make one panel, then another panel, and then you seam it closed. And by doing that, you get to just close over your ends. You don't have to crochet over them where they'll poke out. They're inside this border. Now, I was lazy because I'm a very lazy crafter apparently, and I only did 1 round of half double crochet for each side. So my border is kind of akin to like an I-cord border in knitting. That's what it kind of reminds me of, but it works. And the ends, like you can see this one, I have to clip this one. It's just poking out a little bit because I didn't position it right. But all my ends are perfectly hidden. I don't think you can even try and see them. There's so many ends. But all I had to do was knot them and crochet and seam the border over them, and done. I had only a few ends to weave in the middle of the blanket, just when if I ran out of yarn and had to attach like the second scrap. There's just a few in the middle, but other than that, it was perfect. It was fine, and I love the finished project. So all the things that held me up from making a scrappy blanket, I found ways to essentially fix. It was hard to take around the house. I came up with a solution to that would make it easy for me to take it around the house. Ends, just the enclosed border. Literally magic. I love the enclosed border. I didn't love the process of making it, mostly because it was my first time doing it, and I kind of doubted myself if I was doing it right, if it was going to work. And I thought maybe like I wouldn't pick up enough stitches and it would cinch in on me, but it worked out fine. And I will probably do it again for another blanket project, because it is, if you want a way to hide your ends, that's it. And the other thing that held me up for making a blanket was I didn't think I was good at matching colors, which is really the reasons to not make a project that's got to be the stupidest. Because look at it. I just love, I think my favorite part is when the blues go into the reds. I love it so much, and I'm really proud of it, and I want to make all the corner to corner scrappy blankets now. So I hope this video maybe gave you some ideas on how to make your own scrappy project. I would love to hear in the comments below if you've ever made a scrappy project before, if there's any problems you've had with scrappy projects that you're looking for solutions for, or if you come up with solutions. I would love to hear all about it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Happy crafting!